Welcome to the Dave Palma Show, the podcast that revives, restores, and awakens your innermost capabilities.
You have the training and the talent to succeed, but do you have the guts to fail?
I love what I do. When you love what you do, you want to be the best at it.
Today is about the power of you. You will change the world.
Find your path to success through the journey of those who have succeeded. And now, your host, Dave Palma.
Hi, welcome back to the Dave Palma Show. And with me on this episode is anti-racist psychotherapist and the developer of the rhythm and processing therapeutic framework and a believer in systemic change. He's been on this show before, hailing all the way from Montreal. David Archer, welcome back to the Dave Palma Show.
Hello. Thank you again, Dave. It's great to be in conversation with you once again.
It's great to have you. Always great to have you on this show, David. Good to have a catch up actually as well, because I'm going to be doing a new mental health course of coaching to actually do seminars to people from my own profession and things like that, and obviously help prevent suicide and things like that in high stressed occupations, so military, medical professions. Of course, during the pandemic, there was even doctors that took their own lives, and things like that. So. And the psychologist for that developing this course, it's accredited now, and he's from Australia. I'll be talking about it with my own audience another time, but
good.
Of course, Canada and Australia have very similar issues around Indigenous peoples, meaning the Aborigines and of course original Indian
Indigenous.
And you do a lot of work around that. So I would actually tailor this course around what happened with the black firefighter that we spoke about on one of our episodes, etc. But of course, I've got to monetize it, so I've got to go to corporates and talk about executive stress and things like that just to get a living as well. So
sure, and you'll find that there are overlaps with all of these.
Exactly, they would want to know about that. Yeah.
I would also just recommend my book, Anti-Racist Psychotherapy, which is the philosophy that helps us to understand what racism is from a trauma-informed lens. Mm-hmm. Because if you will be working with people for preventing mental health issues, just know that sometimes what sets the foundation for the mental health stressor, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, is the accumulation of traumatic experiences. So typically, I'm a trauma specialist. So my specialization is in treating complex trauma, also complex racial trauma. And many of my clients don't come to me for that reason. They come to me because something happened to them in their relationship, something that happened to them at their work. And then when we start to talk, we start to find out that there are certain events that formed the just the right environment for the worsening of their mental health conditions. So if it is about preventing suicide, just know that we need to know about how often there have been suicide attempts. We also need to know a little bit about what happened in their past or their past experiences that led them to progress towards wanting to take their lives. But ultimately, anti-racist psychotherapy also considers what are the other factors that practitioners usually don't think about: race, gender, sexual identity. Exactly. It could be immigrant populations. It could be marginalized experiences. So we want to find a way in the next generation to look at the whole person and to ultimately become revolutionary therapists, whether you're in my mental health field or not.
Yeah, we want to be pioneers, basically, David, in this sort of work.
You got it.
Which 2020 was a real. It's a historical day for all this, and obviously, I remember it's when we first started talking, and of course, the Black Lives Matter movement really got in. I don't know what's happened now with it, but of course, it shows the importance of what this work is all about, really. So
you got it.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, let's move on, and we don't want to waste too much time, but your new book now coming out, Transforming Complex Trauma, Reflections on Anti-Racist Psychotherapy. And I would imagine, is this a follow-on from Anti-Racist Psychotherapy book?
Yeah. This is actually my fifth book. The first book, if I can, actually, let me just share it onto our virtual
just to
screen.
let my audio audience know, anyone listening on Spotify or Apple, that if you move on to YouTube, if you have it, you don't need to have it. You can just go on YouTube and you will see the
yes.
Presentation that Dave is giving me at the moment.
The catalog.
Yeah.
You'll see
but
the catalog.
Otherwise, we're going to speak for the benefit of audio as well, and I will spell it out.
Yeah, exactly. I'll explain everything that I'm showing here. So again, the first book, Anti-Racist Psychotherapy, Confronting Systemic Racism and Healing Racial Trauma. This is a book that is very important for people who are therapists, non-therapists, just for us to change the way how we look at racism and to make it so that rather than us victim blaming, we're able to understand it in the context of trauma, in the context of PTSD, and also in the context of racial trauma. Mm-hmm. Black Meditation is the second book, which me and Dave, thank you again. You're the first podcaster we've had the discussion about for this book.
Right.
Again, yes. And so Black Meditation, 10 Practices for Self-Care, Mindfulness, and Self-Determination. This book was made because there are many Black people who feel that there's a taboo of seeking mental health services, and that, you might end up with a therapist who doesn't really understand where you're coming from. And so that's the reason why I made Black Meditation for self-care techniques that people can use.
Yes.
There's an audiobook so that you can have me in your headphones and I can be giving you a meditation. And it's been helpful for a lot of people. Fantastic. Even some therapists have reached out to me saying that they're using me as their co-therapist in their sessions, making me do the meditation for their clients. So it's helping a lot of people. Racial Trauma Recovery is the third book, Healing Our Past Using Rhythm and Processing. And that's where I unveiled the therapeutic framework to eliminate the mental health consequences of racial trauma. That's the approaches called rhythm and processing strategies. And I'm very proud of that. I went last year to present at in Kentucky at the International Society for the Study of Trauma and Dissociation's annual conference as a plenary speaker to talk about my research findings and to talk about how you can use this awesome approach that people are healing from their trauma using Japanese anime, using gospel music, using
and Japanese anime
videos of cats and goats. It's really anything that a person loves. They're able to bring into their therapy. So I've been having people who are from religious groups, people who are even in different cultural groups who've been able to find a truly client-centered way of being able to heal. So I'm super proud about that. And then Black Mountain Fight for the Future is a science fiction novel where if you aren't so into the whole academic thing, you might be into martial arts and people shooting fire out of their hands to destroy killer robots. And also want to know about how to defeat interplanetary fascist governments. And that's what Black Mountain Fight for the Future is. And so then the follow-up is now the fifth book, which is Transforming Complex Trauma, Reflections on Anti-Racist Psychotherapy. This book, I wrote it because my brother was like, yo, I like your books, but your books are too long. I want a shorter book that I could read. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'm going to try to do that. And it ended up that this book still was more than 100 pages. I can't help it. There's so much to talk about.
100 pages isn't much. My book's 100 pages, but I did it 10 years ago. So.
Yeah, exactly. This book, I think with the index and everything, it still is 155 pages. It's okay. He's my brother. He has to forgive me. But the thing is that Transforming Complex Trauma, Reflections on Anti-Racist Psychotherapy is really meant to consolidate all of the bigger ideas from the previous books and meant to put it in a digestible way where even if you're a therapist, if you're an activist, if you're just interested in trying to understand why therapy has to change and how therapy can change, that's what this book is. And this would be the book for you.
Yeah, excellent. Well, let's have a look at some of the notes that I've got on this and just go through it a little bit. Obviously, not read the whole book out so they don't buy it, but of course, the idea is to give them some extracts. That's how you promote these books anyway. You know. As you say, it's principles from your previous work.
Yes.
And it addresses 4 cores of anti-racist psychotherapy. What are these 4 cores in?
Yeah. So the 4 cores of anti-racist psychotherapy is going to be the social political context. It's going to be the family systems context. And then it'll be the racial trauma context and then the individual context.
Sounds like everything I went through while I was in the fire brigade, especially. And obviously some things I'm going through family-wise now, but I don't want to obviously bring it up. But I think I gave you a touch of some issues I'm going through. But
yes.
Very
and
interesting.
It's not only you.
Not only me. It's a lot of...
Yeah. It's not only you, is that I found out that these cores, they would develop out of my meetings with clients. This isn't from my research or from what I learned in school. This is from speaking to people on the ground. And I found out that with what you were going through, other people are also going through as well.
Yes.
And if we want to have a therapy that's addressing people as being whole people, then we need to know that, yes, there's an individual context. There's also traumas that happen because of the social construction of their identity, which is called racial trauma for the sake of this explanation. Yeah. Then there's also the family systems context, which is going to say how people interact in their family of origin, how people generally interact in systems where they find themselves in community with others, workplace, school, etc.
And then the social system.
Exactly. And the social political context, which sometimes is part of the institutional system, but it's especially the society. So it's going to say then that when, again, that there were bombs that were dropping on Palestine, I had clients who are from the Middle East, and they were coming to meet with me because of their stresses. If I were trying to look at it from this colorblind perspective, I'd be doing them an injustice. I needed to speak to them about what their specific stresses were. And that helped them to feel as if they were not alone. So this is the reason why we want to just have an understanding of the 4 layers of anti-racist psychotherapy, because, and I'll jump back to what you were saying before, if we're going to ask clients about suicidality, the client is not going to disclose to us if they feel as if we are not prepared to hear their answer. So it's not that we need to know everything about the client, but we just need to know that there are individual contexts of who they are as a person, racial trauma context of knowing gendered violence is going to affect certain genders and certain people in different ways. The family systems context of knowing that where you come from and how you interact with people and how they interact with you is important. And then the social political context of knowing that, that there's a society that sometimes is not going to be anti-racist. Let's just put it in that way. I also wanted to say that this book comes on the heels of a presentation I gave, because I was a keynote speaker at the University of Michigan. And there I was doing a talk about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The name of the presentation was the inspiration of MLK, rhythm, processing, and transformation. And what was so interesting about it is I was reading parts of my book. I was also playing segments of him talking. And even though he's talking about things in the 60s, a lot of it is very relevant for today.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. And I feel that there's a misremembering that happens of him. Can I ask, Dave, in the UK, how do they talk about MLK? Like, are there discussions about
it's huge. But I mean, the thing is, not as huge nowadays as it was when I was growing up as a kid. But the problem was there was a lot of racism. What racism when I was growing up as a kid and when I was an adolescent, so in the 70s and 80s, you talk about it and there was this big struggle. But of course, it was breaking through. We had our own similar issues. But to be honest, the civil rights issues in the MLK's time was almost on par with apartheid because of the separation, So it wasn't as severe as the UK, but in the UK it's more subtle. So even though there wasn't the segregation like there was blatantly and still is blatantly in the US, really, I think. There is that kind of subtle racism that goes on. So I think the MLK was kind of, and not these days, because especially with things like Black Lives Matter will come up and it's we've got to do something about it. And I think all this really started getting taken seriously when a young boy called a teenager called Stephen Lawrence got stabbed to death by some white youths. And I just joined the fire brigade, and I was not that much older than him. And the police didn't deal with it properly. And then that's a very similar thing to what really happens with systemic racism with the police in America. Right. So that's when and then when they made a report 10 years later and found them, and similar reports came out both in the fire service and police again, just only recently, last year in November, they start to take it more seriously. So in answer to your question, MLK didn't really got taken seriously, although it was very huge because it was a new thing to everyone, in the 1960s and 70s. Even when he got assassinated, obviously brought and Malcolm X, let's not forget about him as well. Get assassinated, it made it even more huge. Of course, Muhammad Ali as well. Don't forget, he was political as well. I don't know if you ever met Farrakhan, but in any case, it was his movement he was more attracted to. Having said that, it was all, well, what's this stuff all about type thing in the UK? I don't bother with that rubbish kind of thing. There was a them and us kind of feeling. But as I say, in 1993, when the young teenager got stabbed to death, Stephen Lawrence's name is, then a report got given just before the turn of this new century. Things started to change a bit in terms of attitudes, but it's still there, the same way.
It's still a work in progress.
Yeah, still work in progress. That's really the way I can summarize it, really. I'm writing an essay on it too much, David.
Yeah. Well, I've got 5 books on it. So
exactly. I did my dissertation on it, but I had to do it on where I was, It's much easier to give ethnographic research and do my dissertation easier with what I know,
Yeah. And it, again, is that I think that there are many dissertations that can be written just from these stories, and even the stories that don't make the news.
Yes,
I feel that
exactly. There's a lot of them out there.
Yes. As a therapist, what happens is that my work is like, I keep everything confidential. So I don't actually say all of the stories, that I hear.
No.
But what has happened is, in doing this work, although I'm confronted with the suffering that exists in our society, at the same time, I'm inspired by hearing the resilience of people and the fact that they can heal from tremendous levels of suffering. Yeah. And it's because I've been inspired of hearing so many people who have been able to heal and to recover that I want to inspire other people to know that it is possible to solve unsolvable problems. People often come to me with things that are seen as treatment-resistant disorders, or they come to me saying that they're broken. And then after they leave the therapy, not believing these things or finding ways out of these difficult experiences. And again, is that you're talking about helping people with suicide risk. The person who has the suicidality, by definition, they're thinking the problem is unsolvable, or they're thinking that it's only one solution that's there. Yeah. And that's why the mental health disorder is oftentimes a person who is closed in and unable to it's like a static form of how they see their lives. And mental health is going to be more dynamic. It's not going to be that things are going to be completely beautiful, or that you'll put your hashtag healed or hashtag therapy, whatever, on Instagram, and you're living your best life. That's not exactly what the solution is supposed to be.
No.
I
it helps with bringing the message out there, obviously, all the mediums as much as you can.
It does, but sometimes my clients will go on IG and then they'll be like, well, how come I'm still sad? I'm looking at these influencers.
There is a danger. There's a danger there.
It's like
use those things as well.
Yeah. The yacht is not supposed to be part of the therapy.
No.
Your mental health is going to be a journey. And most people need to know that this is something that we work on. So when a person's at a place of mental health, it's not that things are going to be perfect, but that they're going to have the regular fluctuations that happen in life, as opposed to the mental health disorder where they have the label of depression and they see the world through the lens of depression. We're able to kind of change our prescription. And that's what I'm trying to do. And ultimately, I want to spread the message so that we can get more of us to do this type of work. In Canada, as you're saying, maybe similar to the UK, is that our racism, it's a little more passive aggressive. As I said, I was in Michigan and I was speaking to the dean of social work there, and she was talking about, well, what's the differences between American racism and Canadian racism? And I said, the main difference is that Canada just has better PR. So the thing is that I get clients that are immigrants. They come to this country and then they're like, why is there all of this racism? It's just they didn't know. Yeah. And so I think there's a defense that the UK and Canada does of trying to say the big problems of MLK are just located in the States as a way of saying we don't have to work with the issues that exist in our country.
It's truly global, as we saw in 2020, with the riots. Well, not the riots, I should say, big campaign. It's not a riot. It was a way to get the message across, to be honest, and it was a very powerful one. That was a very powerful movement. Then
it was life changing, but just like COVID, is that it was racism is this international export. Yeah, you were mentioned before about like you said, the Indigenous people is that before. They used to call them the Indians because Christopher Columbus just got lost. He didn't know what he was. He went to the wrong
I didn't really know what to say, but I mean, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where my mum's side of my family's from, actually they're not there, where they Diaspora from Africa, but the original peoples, and I've got friends there, are Caribs.
Yes.
Of course, they're mixed race now in terms of obviously how we moved on, but
yes, and
so,
also. Yeah, and in Jamaica and the area, I think there were the Arawak Indigenous people, and they were genocided. They were completely destroyed.
Oh, they're like America then, almost.
Yeah,
like USA. I mean, yeah.
And again, is that in different ways, genocide shows up in various different ways, which is what happened to my ancestors before they got to Jamaica as well. It's just I used to work in an Indigenous community, and at first there was a bit of apprehension from one of my clients at the time. He was like, you're black. And I'm like, yeah, of course. This is how I look like every day. And he's like, well, how are you going to understand what I'm going through? We don't have the same problems. And I said, the only difference between me and you is that my people were taken from our land and your land was taken from your people. Yeah. And then after he just gave me a pound of respect, and he's like, all right, cool. Now you're starting, because again, we got to address the social political context that surrounds the mental health issue. And when the therapist is able to be honest, and when they're able to come from not just the head, but also coming from the heart of who they are and the purpose of why people must heal and recover, I think it really shines through when I'm speaking to my clients. Mm-hmm. And I just want not only for me and my clients to have this level of gratitude for what it is that they have in the healing of the sessions. I want other therapists to be able to have these experiences too. I want as many people in the world to have the experience of truly feeling understood and listened to, and truly coming to a place where they can say that they love themselves, that they are people worthy of honor and dignity, and and that they can gain psychological freedom, as MLK described it back in those days.
Fantastic. And it also says here that your book, before we finish up, is advocating for advanced healing methods that tackle the roots of systemic injustice and various identity-based stresses. So could you elaborate on that, David?
Sure. Well, I think we've been talking about it.
Yeah, we have been talking about it. That's why I wanted to stay on the subject and see what the book says about it, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, but we're always on topic. It's that the root cause is that it may look as if our suffering is just based on the individual, but let's go from a family systems perspective. Sometimes what will happen is a parent will contact me or other family therapists, and they'll be like, my kid, they're doing this thing at school. There's all these problems. Fix my kid. And then the family therapist has to say like, okay, well, where does the kid live? Well, he lives with me, of course. Okay, well, in that case, we need the whole family to be there. And why is because sometimes the child is going to be the identified patient. It's the person that we say is the problem. And it's the child who's failing in their classes. It's the child who may have these quote unquote dysfunctions at school, but sometimes their behavior serves a function in the system that they're a part of. Sometimes if they are having problems at school, it takes the parents' focus away from the problems in their relationship. Sometimes the problems that the child has in school makes it so that instead of the parents having a divorce, they have to come together to kind of stay with each other in order to solve the problem of the kid. So sometimes the problems that the child is experiencing is just reflective of the dysfunction that's already in the relationship that has the most power in the person's household. I will say the same thing with our country is done. Is let's go up to the next core, is that if it is that Black people are experiencing this stress, and if it is that many of my clients are coming to meet with me, I'll give examples of, I'll get Black female clients in corporate environments coming to meet with me for the same exact reason, is that they're facing this glass ceiling. They're not coworkers. They don't work at the same company, but there's a similar kind of like household that they're a part of, which just happens to be my country. And then when we think about, in the United States, as you might have heard in the news, they're like removing affirmative action. They're getting rid of these policies that make it so that they can admit equitably more people who have been historically marginalized, and prevented access from wealth, resources, and education, Black people. Yeah. And they're removing this because they're saying it's discriminating against white people, which is ridiculous. But just know that because Canada didn't have this policy in the law, we have more racial disparities in terms of who are Black therapists, in terms of who are graduating from post-secondary education. And so it's just to say, if we have it already built in the system that you are not going to come into the university, that you are not going to graduate and become a president of a company or a vice president, then doesn't it make sense then that even if you're not aiming for those higher level positions, that in your respective jobs, you're also going to see a reflection of that because it's the same household. It still is the institution. Yeah, it's just, we're talking about the institution at a higher level. Yeah. So really what it is that we end up having to heal, because that identified patient who's the child ends up being my client. We end up needing to heal the suffering we've inherited from our parents. Yeah. We end up needing to heal the suffering we've inherited from their grandparents. And ultimately, because we are treating racial trauma, we end up needing to heal the trauma that the society has caused us to experience. Yeah. That's a great way of putting it, David. I'd like to just have our audience now learn more about your book and find out where they can get all your books, actually, and find out more about your work as well, David. Sure. So I will say two things. One is that if you're interested in what you're hearing me talk about, and you want more controversial ideas about how we should radically change the way how therapy is provided, and also increase the amount of Black therapists, the amount of anti-racist therapists of all backgrounds, and the amount of revolutionary therapists who can change the way how we look at our world in their different and respective fields. You can go to Amazon, you can get the books. You can go to archertherapy.com and you can get the books. And if you don't find the books in your bookstore, ask them to get it. Yeah. Because I want also that we are not just sending all of our money to billionaires who fly rockets in outer space. We also need to find out how we can make... Are you on X, by the way? No, I don't. All right, okay. I don't take those types of drugs. Right, okay. He won't be deleted. I think it's bad for your health. I think it's bad for your health. I do believe that for Black bookstores, they need to be supported, not just in 2020. There are some Black bookstores that got a surge of support because there were people who were like, yeah, we got to help people who are historically attacked by our social structure. But there are some Black bookstores that are feeling like the white lash and feeling as if they're not getting as much. So that's why I'm saying, if you don't want to support it from Amazon, that's perfectly cool. I understand, I empathize, but you can go to your library, you can go to your bookstore, you can go to your university, request these books, because the only way that a change will take place is if we understand it's greater than any one individual. When I was at the University of Michigan talking about anti-racist psychotherapy, I made it a point to also explain that this is not something that just concerns therapists. This is not something that just concerns the practice of trauma specialists, is that we have this racial bias in pain assessment for nurses, for people who are doctors, medical professionals. And what happens is, because of the trauma of enslavement that took place, white people and our society in general needed to understand that a black person's pain is not the same as a white person's pain. Why? Because there'd be no justification for the whip. There'd be no justification for stealing people from Africa. There'd be no justification for stealing their resources, which to some degree, some European countries are still doing this. It's just not as violent. It's just not as explicit.
Yeah.
So what happens is that it translates then into multiple professions, is that Black patients are just less likely to receive analgesia. Black patients, a Black woman, are more likely to die during childbirth, 3 to 4 times higher than white women.
There's been a big thing in the UK about that.
In the UK as well. So this is what I mean, is that it's just PR. It's just PR just saying that this is an American problem. And some of the studies that I'm quoting are from the UK too, is that 40% of pharmacists are racially diverse, but are significantly underrepresented in management positions. What this all means is that that's why I told one of the students who was in the audience, is I said, we don't just need anti-racist psychotherapy. We need you in your respective fields to create your anti-racist movement as well. We need anti-racist gynecologists if we're seeing that this violence is affecting Black women at this disproportionate rate. We need anti-racist dentistry if we see that there's structural racism that's going to impact the oral health of racially diverse people. And ultimately, we need an anti-racist society. And so I'm not going to stop writing until I find a way of being able to just inspire people at this greater way. And again, I also love to write. I also love to share. And I not only want just the intellectual understanding, I want people to get the experiential experience. So that's why in the presentation, there was also a mindfulness exercise that we did to get to that root cause. Fantastic. And that root cause is finding a way of making it so that the physical experience of pain, of suffering, that we can respond to it differently. That the physical experience of pain is something that is a part of our mind. It's a part of our brain. And so we want to find ways of being able to use the body to calm the mind, to use the mind to calm the body, and ultimately to heal the trauma that's at the source of our discontents.
Fantastic, Dave. Dave, sorry about hurrying you there. Zoom's going to be kicking me off soon, unfortunately, but I'm going to find a way to make these podcasts longer soon. But Dave, it's always a pleasure to have you on, and I love the fact that you love writing, and I look forward to having you for our next book, or just have you on my show again anyway. We can carry it forever. But in the meantime, thanks again for once again coming on the Dave Palmer Show, Dave.
Many blessings. Thank you so much. Blessings to you and your audience.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening, and remember, if you want to support what we do, then share, subscribe, and leave a review over on Apple Podcasts, or head over to my website, davepalmer.com, and click on Rate Show. Well, that's all for now, but I'll see you in the next episode of The Dave Palmer Show.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.